Okay, so another Sydney Cider dancing movie. I chose Strictly Ballroom. So this is a movie from 1992, and it is an underdog story of how Scott, an open amateur ballroom dancer, wants to go against the ballroom dancing establishment and dance his own non-federation steps in competition. He teams up with Fran, a beginner ballroom dancer with only 2 years of experience, to dance in the Pan Pacific Grand Prix Dancing Championship. This is an underdog story about beating the establishment and corruption. It is very much a story about going out there and doing things you want to do and being the person you want to be. Comedy, romance, drama, this film has it all. And it's Baz Luhrmann's feature film debut. It is a foot tapper that you have to go see, and it's guaranteed to put a smile on your face. And this one actually won 8 out of the 13 Australian Film Institute awards that it was nominated for. And it won the Cannes Film Festival Award of the Youth for Foreign Film. And it won 3 of the 8 BAFTAs it was nominated for. And it was also nominated for the Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy at the Golden Globes. So it has a great pedigree.
And it put Baz Luhrmann on the map.
It really did, as in it was this movie, Romeo and Juliet, and Moulin Rouge. That's what's known as his Red Curtain trilogy. And it was Moulin Rouge is the one that they won the Oscar for costuming for.
So Australia was obviously in like a dancing fever in the early 90s. It seemed like.
It must have been. But then again, I think everything was set in Sydney in the early 90s, I'm pretty sure too.
Yeah, Melbourne didn't exist in the early 90s.
Nope.
But it sort of is of a piece with Priscilla in more than just dancing, because it is kind of the idea of tradition and challenging tradition and outsiders and almost sort of creating this new language to define who you are. Like you can't, especially for the I've forgotten the character's name, the female lead.
Fran.
But, Fran, she's very much like a wallflower and can't really express herself except through dance, and that's kind of how she comes out of her shell, or that's how she blooms.
Yeah.
So that idea of not being able to speak yourself, but being able to express yourself through movement and music and transform that way, in costume, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ugly duckling story. It's not the most ridiculous transformation. Like, she's all that. You're like,
no,
she's plain, but she's pretty, but she's still pretty plain. Like, it's nice.
Right.
Also, Sarah, thank you for choosing this film, because I've never seen it. I've also never seen
I've never seen it
because I don't know how.
What?
What?
I'll fix it. It's fine.
Wait, what? Have you never seen The Castle?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either. We can,
I don't even know what it is.
Oh my god.
Hey, I said it earlier that I hadn't seen it in the chat, okay? You obviously didn't read it then.
You are a monster.
I don't even know what it is, so.
It's
what am I doing
massive movie, like cult. As in, like, I always hear my parents talking about it or referencing it, and I'm like, yeah, I need to watch it. I
think it's a film that only Australians would find funny. I don't think it would work for Americans, because it's so like specific and silly in the way in the jokes. But it's like, yeah, that's probably my favorite, if not one of my favorite Australian films. But if we do another round table, we can do that definitely, because you got to watch it.
It's the Faulty Towers of Australia. Like, it's referenced in the same way, I feel.
It's Mabo. It's justice. It's the vibe. It's just the vibe.
But also how, like, Baz Luhrmann-esque, like, not all of his shots, but when they're dancing around the Hills Hoist in front of that massive coke ad, I'm like, that is Moulin Rouge. Like, that shot is used in Moulin Rouge. Yep. And it's really nice to see that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I totally get why middle-aged women get all hot under the collar for him now. But, like, Strictly Come Dancing. Yeah. Dancing for the Stars. I was like, oh, he is still on that, like,
but in this movie
from the 80s.
I have a weird story.
Yeah?
I didn't realize it, or I didn't put the pieces together till I watched this movie again, but I had Paul Mercurio as like a dancing, for our year 10 formal rehearsals, he was the guy that was coordinating it. So when we were like practicing with it,
what?
For like once a week.
They love
once a week for like a month. leading up to the formal, he was the guy that was coordinating it. And I hadn't seen that movie. I hadn't seen Strictly Ballroom at this point. But he mentioned Dancing with the Stars like while he was giving us lessons. I think we were like acting up and weren't following the moves or something. And he got really huffy and said, I'm on Dancing with the Stars. It's like the highest rated TV show on Channel 7 or something.
Oh no.
And then I realized, oh, okay. And I looked at Dancing with the Stars. I'm like, oh my God, that guy's my dancing teacher. And then I watched Strictly Ballroom and goes, oh, that's that guy.
Oh, right.
Dancing with the Stars.
Oh.
And now, and just rewatching it in the last week or so, I'm like, oh, that guy, Paul Mercurio taught me for like a couple of weeks in year 10.
The thing is, Paul Mercurio was actually a ballet dancer, like classical ballet and a bit of jazz. That was his background. He was not a ballroom dancer.
Right, he hasn't learned it all, I read.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you can definitely see that in some of his leaps, like when he's leaping around Fran. That's ballet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely ballet.
Right, yeah. A lot of his dance is very ballet, which is, I think, the idea. I want to do different stuff, not traditional. But so I have a weird little thing with this movie in that I'd heard of it and I never had all that much interest, so I never saw it. But the song it ends with, John Paul Young's "Love Is in the Air." That was originally from 1978, I think, and it actually went top 10 in the U.S., top 5 in Australia, and I didn't really know it because I was 10 at the time. But when this movie came out, it was re-recorded and re-released, and there was actually some dance mixes, a Strictly mix and a ballroom mix, and it became a huge hit in gay clubs, and I heard it everywhere. I don't know if it was so big in other clubs, but it became a big thing, and even now, like if you go to like what we call tea dance, which is like a dance at tea time, British tea time, like, 4, 5, 6 in the afternoon on like the weekends, or also in like resort getaways, like, your resort towns, like on the beach. But, it's a thing they do a lot, these tea dances where you play oldies, and you could almost anytime you'll go to one, you'll hear this song. Like I know this, every word of the song. And it's funny, I'd never realized it was because of this movie. So it was like the thing that it's known for. I mean, I bet if you went to any like out gay man in his like late 30s and up in America, they would know this song. But I don't, I'd never even heard of John Paul Young other than this song. It's not like anything we'd know. And in fact, it's considered pretty quintessentially Australian in that when the Olympics were there, the Sydney Olympics Games, they, in the closing ceremonies, had him there singing it. And I just saw this on YouTube, like after I watched this movie and was looking into it a little, and the song, when I was looking on YouTube for like what mix I knew of it, and they had a whole big event where they had like champion ballroom dancers come out and sing it. I mean, and dance to it. And then they had whole crowds doing it. And they even had these like giant floats of ballroom dancers with their big dresses. They made a whole big spectacle during the Olympics to be like, this is like an Australian thing. So interesting, just little side note.
Oh, no, that's because it's the same. I think in the opening ceremony, they had a stiletto on a bus with all these mini stilettos around it. Yeah, we do like our pop culture. Just backtracking a little bit. Duncan, how is your knee skid? So when it comes to like entering on a ballroom kind of scene, is it good? Like, do you have a nice long skid?
No, this was very rudimentary, just 1-2 step with a partner. There was no knee skidding involved. Unfortunately, we didn't get to that lesson.
Oh well.
Also,
one other musical note. Can I give one more musical note real quick? Tara Maurice, who played Fran, she sang the version of "Time After Time" by Cyndi Lauper that's in that. So Fran sang that song, just so you know.
When you dance your steps, I understand how you feel, because I make up my own steps too.
You make up your own steps?
Yeah, and now we both haven't got partners.
Look, what are you carrying on about? You've never had a partner. You've been dancing with a girl for 2 years, haven't you?
Yeah, but...
And now you've come up to me, who's been dancing since I was 6 years old, and you say, you want to dance non-federation and convince the judges at the Pan-Pacific Grand Prix with 3 weeks to train?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Just give me a tryout.
Look, go home.
Just 1 hour.
This is very embarrassing.
I just need a chance.
You're going to wake up tomorrow and feel like a real idiot about this.
Do you want to dance your own steps or not?
It's none of your business.
Well, do you?
Look, a beginner has no right to approach an open amateur.
Yeah, well, an open amateur has no right to dance non-federation steps, but you did, didn't you?
That's different.
How is it different? You're just like the rest of them. You think you're different, but you're not, because you're just really scared. You're really scared to give someone new a go because you think, you know, they might just be better than you are. Well, you're just pathetic and you're gutless. You're a gutless wonder. Vivid con Dios, como vivir a medias.
We haven't actually talked about whether we like the movie and stuff like that. What we thought
I
of
think
it.
we can all say that we like it.
I liked it, but I thought it was like a little shallow and a little light, and I found it was like kind of predictable. Like it was very much.
Also, what makes it so good, especially because hey, the Babadook and Walking Pride.
Right. It was. Oh no, it was definitely light and very good contrast to the movies we're watching here. But I mean, I just felt like at no point did I not know exactly where this was going. Like, it seemed like I was watching a movie I've seen 10 times before, like a Disney classic, you know, like very light. And
it also makes it feel very cozy.
Yeah. I think of the 4 movies, to me, it was probably the movie with, like, the least kind of to talk about in terms of thematic substance or whatever. Yeah. But I think what I liked about it was how it's a very sort of heightened and intense. I think the best part of it is kind of the aesthetic and the dancing, obviously. And the whole movie almost feels like a dance, like all the emotions and all the yelling and all the quickness and the sharpness of the relationships are kind of, they almost have the heightened, nonsensical reality of a dance. Everyone's toiling around and so I like that style was very unique, I thought.
Definitely. No, actually, I chose this one because it had such a big critical acclaim, and it's actually still one of Australia's top 10 highest grossing pictures.
Which is an interesting point, because a lot of these movies didn't do well financially, but this did.
Yeah. No, but then again, this one, it has very wide appeal, and it does have parts of it that are Australian, so that's like the Hills Hoy clothesline. That's a typically Australian.
Is it?
And also the sort of the immigrant experience of Fran, the fact that she's trying to fit into this very
different world, and she's
the different world, but also this kind of authorized and rule bound kind of world. But she takes inspiration from her parents and from her old country, and injects that energy into this, so that they're sort of getting a new point of view and injecting that into the experience and introducing spontaneity and what I mean. The ultimate message the ultimate message of the film seems to be, you don't dance to win a competition, you dance because you love it, and that's kind of the kind of climax of fun at the end where everyone's dancing,
which is interesting, because usually in these movies it would end with they won the competition and that's the great victory, and I thought it was interesting that they ended before. We never do find out what happened, and we don't care, because they're happy, you know. Dad gets to finally dance his new moves. The son gets to dance his moves. They find love. Love is in the air.
And even the villain, Bill Hunter, kind of just, you know, looks around, looks at everyone having fun, and just kind of shrugs his shoulders, and it's like everything's fine at the end. It's a very happy ending.
Yes.
I am not a romantic, and I very rarely like films with this in, and very rarely does it even make me smile. So I kind of chuckled a little when he was like, you know, dancing, it's just for pretend. I'm like, you tell her. And he's like, maybe it's not pretend. And I smiled, and I'm like, good on you, Baz Luhrmann, good on you. You melt my cold icicle heart.
No, but as well, with this movie, it's more of they started out as friends, and like,
well, she had a crush on him right from the start. That was obvious, I think.
Yeah, but it's
he
also
grew to care about her.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I thought was interesting about this was the tone the film takes, particularly with its, like, you know, kind of almost documentary style at points, and it's almost like whole sections of it are very deliberately overacted in a way that's like stylish. You know, I like that whole, like, you know, when they're trying to be over serious, and there's just a lot of stuff in there that's almost campy, but yet works for it in a weird way. Like, as I'm watching it right from the beginning, I was like, this is not the tone I was expecting. This is interesting, you know, and then but it worked in the end, but it wasn't like what you'd expect from this kind of a movie.
Yeah, this movie is very, very light and very easily digestible, and which is why I really, really enjoy it.
But it almost pretends to be lighter than it actually is, I think, which is, I think, interesting.
Yeah, and the tone they chose for it is lighter than it could have gone because they do have corruption in it, so they could have chosen to pick up on those themes a lot more and weigh it down with that.
Yeah, you could definitely depict the mother figure in a much darker light when she's like putting on my happy face and putting on my like she's like completely falling apart mentally, and the father is like browbeaten and can't stagger out two sentences and all that. But it's a deceptively a lighter tone than the actual content of the film.
Even the like really dark line, like you think I haven't had my days where I wasn't happy, in my marriage. I don't remember exactly what she says, but like that's a really dark thing to admit to your kid, But yet it was done almost campy the way it was delivered. Like it was odd, but kind of neat.
And that's kind of the idea of tradition, and that they're feverishly hanging onto this system that clearly makes them miserable. And if they would actually just let loose and dance, they might actually be happy.
Which is what they're supposed to be doing, if you think about it.
I know, the irony.
I really loved the flashback sequences to the young dad back in his heyday, because it seemed to me it was almost cartoonish, but it also was very reminiscent of the silent era films, especially with the makeup, because it was very pale faces with very dark makeup on otherwise. Had such a great comparison between the ordinary filming that they had done and those shots.
Yeah, speaking of silent films, it's almost like a vaudevillian movie that doesn't even require the characters to speak. Like you can read all of the emotions and all of the plot.
Right.
Having the mute button on. I mean, obviously you want the music, but it's all sort of communicated through the dancing and through the facial expressions. It's a very kind of it would probably play well in countries where they didn't even speak the language.
Yep. Actually, Baz Luhrmann has said something about that he and his, I think it was his wife, went and saw a Hindi film, and it wasn't subtitled and none of it was in English and they couldn't understand it, but they understood everything the movie was trying to convey through the actions of the actors. So it seems interesting that he sort of did that here as well. Yeah.
It's the same.
There's other little bits, of one of the parts that just really made me laugh, probably a bit too much, because it shows my the way that I stereotype a certain type of Australian male from a certain generation. But when Bill Hunter and his missus are fooling around and he's done and she's obviously enjoying herself and he's like, no, calm down, I'm done now, kind of thing. And it was just like, oh, that's pretty much how I picture my grandparents' generation.
Oh, man.
Shouldn't have brought my grandparents up in that. That makes it.
Yeah, please don't.
I was going to say, we're going to play this for them in this podcast.
What will you do if they go around and listen? Are they still alive? Will they come and listen?
I walked into my parents once. That was enough.
Oh, bro.
Well, speaking of repressed trauma, we might move on to the next.
That's my king.